Hey, this is Eddie Olczyk. You're listening to Empty Betters with Nick, Mac, and Harrison.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to episode 99 of Empty Betters. I'm your host, Harrison Scholes. I'm going to toss it across the screen. You do that 99 times, and you're bound to fumble one of them. I'm going to toss it across the screen to my co-host for the 99th time, Nick Manella. What's going on, buddy?
Dude, that is nuts to think about. But yeah,
I
no
know.
worries. Everyone, fumbles a breakout pass here and there. I did that, more than my fair share, so it's all good. Yeah, I'm doing well, man. Just enjoying my glorious Monday post Michigan State football game. I've got
Hell of a game.
Hell of a game. Did not look like it was going to go very well for my household at the beginning, but fortunately, what I've seen over the last 10 years is just true. It's that Michigan cannot beat Michigan State when John Harbaugh is their coach.
Jim.
Yeah, whichever Harbaugh. I like one. I hate the other one. I should know that.
No, I hear you. Yeah, that was a hell of a game. I was worrying that you were gonna stroke out, mid game there. So
close there for a little bit.
Yeah, it's good to see that we got you here on Monday. Speaking of football, not to turn this subject, but how about the Bengals dropping to the Jets? Huge loss.
Yep.
Great for the Ravens.
Big old kick in the dick for me, though.
Yeah. That Carson Wentz is not good at football. I'm just going to say it.
No.
I'm sure you already know that, but some of those interceptions were extremely questionable.
No, and I just meant the Bengals dropping that game to the Jets. It's like when I was setting up my, perfectly titled can't miss football parlay for the 1 p.m. games. I was like, well, there's no way the Jets are going to win today. And of course, because they're the Jets, when you bet them to win, they lose. And when you bet them to lose, they win.
Yeah, that's just how it works. I thought you were alluding to the Colts because I'm sure.
Oh, no, that was just an atrocious quarterback performance, in my opinion. But
are you? Would you say Colts are still your main team, or
Jim Irsay has done? And I'm glad you asked this because someone brought this up to me at a wedding I was at last weekend. Jim Irsay has done everything in his power to make me want to dislike this team. He brought in Phillip Rivers, who I actively have hated for like 15 years. And if that wasn't good enough, he went out and got the quarterback I despise the next amount, which was Carson Wentz. So,
right. So, because I have people ask me sometimes, when they're listening or they just get to, know who the co-hosts are. They're like, oh, like, are they Ravens fans? I'm like, well, I think Nick is, but it's not his main team. But
yeah, I think you can say that at this point.
I think you're getting there.
Yeah.
Right. So, okay. Yeah. Like when they played on Monday night, who'd you root for? Did you?
Honestly, I don't want to sound like Rob Lowe, but I sat down with
just hope both teams play well.
Yeah, I just wanted to see a good game on Monday night. Is that too much to ask?
No, I'll respect it. I appreciate the honesty. But yeah, episode 99, kind of crazy. We probably would have hit it sooner if it weren't for the pandemic when we took a little pause there. But yeah, next episode's a big one. So we got some big announcements. Next episode, we are going to have some fun segments, kind of to celebrate what we've done, where we're going, what we're doing. So should I spoil it or should I save it for what they can expect in the episode?
Go ahead and spoil it.
Okay. So I figured we thought this would be cool, and I can't believe we still have the footage of this. I shouldn't say footage. There's no video, but it's all audio. So back in August of 2019?
Just about. I mean,
it was like August 2nd, I think. It was like first week in August 2019. Before we officially published our first episode, I think Nick was going away and I was going away, and we didn't launch our first episode until September of 2019. But in August, we met up in Nick's kitchen at his old apartment, and we basically made a pact. We were like, okay, if this sounds decent, we'll do it. And if it doesn't, maybe we'll practice or we'll just say, fuck it, it wasn't meant to be or whatever. So we did a 15-minute demo.
Yeah, start to finish.
Yeah, of power ranking like the top 20 NHL centers based on what NHL Network gave. Never recorded before together ever. First run. It sounds funny. We've definitely come a long way. And man, has Braden Point gotten a lot better in those rankings since then.
Yeah, that one did not age well.
No.
The fact that like we highlight, I think multiple times, if I can remember 2 years back correctly, that we said that we did not think he belonged in the top 10, but
yeah, that's obviously changed it, 2 years later, but we'll put that at the end of next episode. Just figured it would be kind of cool for you guys to hear where it all started and
how much better it's gotten.
How much, I hope. Maybe it's
I
gotten
would
worse.
hope so.
Who knows? But that'll be on the next episode. We're also going to be doing a giveaway on Instagram. Be on the lookout for that. We're going to be giving away some merch, some Brackish Life shit. We're going to be doing that in the next week. So just keep an eye out for that for our 100th episode celebration. Not sure if we're having like a celebration yet. We're working on some things.
Stuff's in the work. If it progresses and we can let people know, we will.
Yeah, if that does happen, we'll know in the next week or so. So we'll let everybody know. And I do want to announce that when this episode goes up, our Instagram post will be published by then. We just launched new fall merch. So our fall merch drop is now live. We have 4 new items. They're awesome. We've been working on them since July. So, we've been working on this for a while at this point. They have been on the store for a little bit. So if you've checked out the store, they're already up. But this is our formal announcement that, hey, you can go buy, get it while the supply chain issues aren't fucking horrible. Well, they are horrible, but until they get
seriously
worse.
Though, get it while you can. That stuff's it, much like the summer stuff, it's not going to be up there forever. And some more cool stuff will be coming towards the end of November as well.
Yeah, so big things coming, and we appreciate all the support. Obviously we wouldn't be putting in this much effort if we hadn't gotten this much support 99 episodes in. So we really do appreciate it from the bottom of our hearts. This is a lot of fun, and we don't plan on stopping. So it's all good.
Yeah. Quick question of the day for you, since we are sans Mac this episode. What was the best Halloween costume you saw this Halloween weekend, and what was the best one you think you've ever seen?
Yeah, before I answer that, I forgot. Mac is not he's not able to record at the time slot that we had to choose, so we'll be without him for this one, but he'll be back for the next one. Switching gears, Halloween best costume I saw. Can I let you go first?
Yeah, sure. It's kind of hard to say the best one I saw. I didn't really like go out or walk around much. I saw someone dress up as this is just on social media, but I saw someone dress up as like Zuckerberg, and they're like, their face was just completely white. That one was really funny. I felt like every couple this year was either Megan Fox and Machine Gun Kelly, or Travis Barker and whichever Kardashian, Courtney, I think it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know.
What did you go as? I didn't even see anything.
I didn't dress up this year.
You didn't?
No.
Did you see what I did?
Yes, yours was good.
Yeah, well, I appreciate Mr. Rick Rowley sending the repost for us. That was appreciated as always. I was Austin Matthews whipped out the white St. Pat's jersey, and then Layla obviously went as the Stanley Cup. We got a lot of compliments on that. That we actually weren't the only ones who did that either. I saw like 2 other ones out that did that.
Nice.
I don't know nothing really stands out to me for things I saw in person, to be honest with you. I didn't really see anything on Instagram. However, I will say Alex Killorn went as Tom
that was
Brady,
good. Yeah.
And he killed it. Like he legit, like from the armbands.
Well, he probably just got like, Bucks equipment.
Yeah, he had like the same face mask as him. I mean, he went all out. It was probably Brady's real helmet. So
right. Just one of the 19 he doesn't wear during the year.
Yeah, I think he killed it. So Tom Wilson's also looked good.
The Caps had some good ones. The Oshis was really funny. I don't know if you got that, but he was the cool mom from Mean Girls. She was Regina George. That was good.
Yeah, she pulled that off well. I'm gonna move on to no, I'm just kidding. It was a good Halloween weekend though.
What's the best one you've seen all time?
All time. I don't know, man. I'm not like a huge Halloween guy. I don't think anything really sticks out. I will say when I was a kid, this happened for like 3 Halloweens in a row. There would be a guy who'd come through the neighborhood in Owings Mills, Maryland, for those of you who are familiar. I think he was actually kind of famous. I think he recently passed away a couple years ago. I think there's a news article about him. He would dress up as Batman and literally like bought a Batmobile. Like,
Oh, that's sick.
full blown, like I can't remember what the exact car was. It was a black convertible sports car. He got like the bat signal like painted on the hood. Like he went all
Is
out.
this the dude with the black Lamborghini?
It might have been, but
Okay.
I don't know. He was in the news when, maybe for all I know, he's not dead, and I just fucked that up probably. But I think he passed away a couple years ago. Some people will actually probably know who I'm talking about. He was kind of famous in like the Baltimore area.
Cool.
Yeah. What about you?
Best one of all time, I would have to say. There was this girl that I knew in college. She was in my girlfriend's sorority, and she had red hair, and she did Darla from Finding Nemo. You know,
That's
like
great.
the crazy chick who comes in and like shakes the bag with the.
Yeah. There was
And
someone on Facebook who did that. They pulled
I
it
mean,
off.
like when I say that she got this like to a T, like glasses, headgear, everything, purple shirt, like walked around with like a bag of goldfish. It was hysterical.
Yeah, I saw someone do that on Facebook, and they it's a good costume to pull off if you do have like red hair. It matches perfectly. So
Yeah, that and then my buddy Reese was he was the Pixar lamp. He just wore a white morph suit and then duct taped a lampshade to his face and just hopped around the whole time.
Yeah, dude, it's so, people are so fucking creative. I'm so done with that. I, in my opinion, pulled off like the boyfriend ideal, like Halloween. You can get away with wearing a jersey.
Yeah,
and no one's gonna give you shit.
Yeah,
that's all I asked for.
Yeah, easy money. Just wear what I normally wear, anyways.
Yeah, really. All righty. Well, we're going to hop in the news here. But before we do, we just want to remind you guys that this episode is brought to you by Brackish Life. Let's take a minute to talk about Brackish Life. If you're like us and grew up on the water and outdoors, then Brackish Life is perfect for you. They have a wide selection of gear from UV shirts to hoodies and hats. It's Real Bay apparel made by Real Bay people. Head to www.brackish.life today to check them out. A little salty, a little fresh, Brackish Life. Brackish Life has also teamed up with Rink to Reef Chesapeake Bay to preserve the area many of us call home. Rink to Reef repurposes broken hockey sticks into oyster restoration habitats. Brackish Life donates a portion of their proceeds to Rink to Reef to further preserve the beautiful Chesapeake Bay area. Support this great cause by checking out www.brackish.life today. Nick, the floor is yours.
All right, let's go. Jack Eichel update. Per the activity yesterday on the 31st, Halloween, hope you guys had a good one. The Flames and the Golden Knights are among the final trade destinations for the Sabres captain. Harry, which do you think is more likely and why?
I'm going to go with the Golden Knights, and here's why. I think they have a little bit more to offer. They're also, I feel like they're the more aggressive franchise of the two. I also, can I be honest with you? I mean, with how hot the Flames are right now, I don't know if you want to mess anything up. And
I completely agree. I was the one who was calling for Eichel to go to the Flames a couple of weeks ago. And honestly, I still think it could happen, but I think that's a great point. You know, this team has been really, really good lately. Now knowing the Flames, like we do know the Flames, that'll change tomorrow, but they've been putting some good hockey games together. Andrew Mangiapane looks really, really good. Kachuk's been playing well. So yeah, I would say I'm going to have to agree with you on that one.
And I have been reading that Shea Theodore would likely be a part of the package if he goes to Vegas. And I just can't help but wonder to myself, like, dude, he's a top 15 for sure, not quite top 10 yet, maybe like 11, 12 in that range. I mean, he's a sick defenseman. He has evolved into one of the best offensive defensemen in the league. He's become a cornerstone of that franchise. I mean, I don't know why you would give him up. I know Eichel's like, you know, a superstar talent, but with his injuries
but like,
I don't know.
Can we say that though? Yeah, the talent's there, just like every other good young player that comes up through the NHL, but we've seen Eichel get hurt.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. Now, that being said, I hope he does go to Calgary because now we have McDavid and Eichel Battle of Alberta, which is just television.
And I feel like putting him in Vegas, I don't know. I just feel like that's.
Well, the thing is, he's going to get more coverage if he goes to Vegas just because they get the primetime games. They're a U.S. market. They're a big market team, blah, blah, blah. But he goes to the Flames, he kind of disappears. I mean, I hate to say it that way.
It's true. Yeah, especially for us on the East Coast.
Yeah, the Western Canada teams never get the recognition they deserve. So
For sure.
Keep an eye on that. I thought that was going to break yesterday, but Darren Drager has said it's been a roller coaster so far this week. So
no, we've been waiting for this one to break for like the last 6 months. So
yeah.
it'll happen eventually. And I'm sure everyone will lose their minds when it does. But quick updates regarding the Chicago Blackhawks and Kyle Beach situation. Since we last spoke, Kyle Beach has identified as himself as the player identified as John Doe in the independent investigation conducted into the Chicago Blackhawks. Since then, Joel Quenneville has resigned as the head coach at the time, the undefeated Florida Panthers, following the release of that investigation becoming public. In addition to this, the Blackhawks owner has asked the Hockey Hall of Fame to remove Brad Aldrich's name from the Stanley Cup. Now, both Lanny McDonald, who's the president of the Hockey Hall of Fame, and Gary Bettman and the Hawks owner discussed this, and the two parties have agreed that this is an acceptable request, and they're going to, put that into motion for, I don't know what you have to do to get that kind of thing done, but seems like they're going to go ahead with that. So that's good to hear.
It is good to hear. Overdue. Are there any more? I'll let you go on to the other updates that you have before I chime in.
Yeah, the other update on that topic is that Jets general manager Kevin Cheveldayoff did meet with Gary Bettman, and following that meeting, he will not be disciplined for his inaction or action in the Chicago Blackhawks case. So yeah, it's about where we stand now.
So today, November 1st, that we're recording this. We didn't even announce our interview guest. Now that I just thought about it, by the way,
we're all over the place.
we're trying to make sense of everything right now. We're joined by Caps radio announcer John Walton. Great guy, great interview. Actually, we haven't interviewed him yet at the time of recording this. That's going to be tomorrow night, and then this will get released on Wednesday.
It'll be great.
Just thought I'd put that out there. Did you listen, watch, read on Twitter the notes from Bettman's press conference today?
I did not.
Look, man, the NHL's in some deep shit, and from a PR perspective, I mean, he wasn't really addressing any questions about the investigation. He hands the Blackhawks a $2 million fine, like we said last episode, and when you put that into perspective with some other penalties that have been dished out in the past, the Coyotes, they were interviewing or working out a prospect that wasn't officially on their roster, and they lost.
So they were conducting tests, like medical examinations on prospects, like when they weren't supposed to, like physicals and stamina tests and stuff like that. Yeah,
they lost like draft picks and shit.
Yeah.
The Devils, when they maneuvered the salary cap like 3 years ago illegally, they got fined $3 million. So when you only fine a team $2 million for the allegations that we're seeing here, just sends the wrong message. And Bettman was clearly, I can't remember the name of the reporter who interviewed Kyle Beach when he, spoke about all this.
Rick Westhead.
Yeah, I think he was supposed to be asking questions at the briefing at 1 p.m. and he didn't call on him, or I think he only called on him like once. And people were like, how are you calling on all these other, recognizable names who really aren't? They're throwing softballs at him.
Sure.
So it's just a bad look. Everybody really is upset about it, and rightfully so. It's just a bad look for the league, in my opinion. But
yeah, no, that's really disappointing to hear. I'm definitely going to have to go back and listen to those and watch the press conference. But I agree. The punishment is not, fitting the crime here, and the league and the organization just need to step it up and do more and not try and squash this in court like I've been reading that they have. So
yeah, I've been reading that as well. So I'm sure this is not the end of this story. So.
No, absolutely not. Moving on to some better news, Ryan Getzlaf officially passed Teemu Selanne as the Ducks franchise all-time leading point scorer. He passed Teemu with an assist against the Habs last night. That point was Getzlaf's 989th of his career in his 1,111th game. So kudos to Getzy for getting that one done. Did you see the reaction from the Ducks bench?
Yeah, they all
was
came
awesome.
On the ice. Yeah, it was cool. It'll be nice to see him when he gets 1,000 there too, all with the Ducks. That's doing it the right way.
Yep, pretty impressive. Cole Caulfield has been sent down to the American Hockey League. He's got one assist so far through 11 games this season. He had a monster last year, broke into the league. I think he had like in the last 10 games, he had 5 points. 4 of those were goals. Goes into the playoffs, and I think he had like 12 points, 4 and 8 through 20 games or something like that. I mean, the dude was awesome. I mean, and this is hands down their number 1 rated prospect. And
the Montreal Canadiens, I've said it for 2 years, benefited more from the coronavirus rules and league setup than any other team in the league. And now it's showing. And I hate I've been saying it for 2 years. They're not a good team. They're really not. And I know you and Mac were like kind of high on them in the season preview. I just don't see it. I really don't. I mean, they don't have the firepower up front, in my opinion, and it's starting to show. And it's showing now that they have to play every team in the league, not just the same like 7 Canadian ones that kind of suck, quite frankly. And it's just not going great right now. And when they lost Shea Weber, I knew that was going to have a huge impact on them. How could it not? He's their captain. He's their leader. He's probably their best defenseman. Now they're having some COVID problems. It's panic time in Montreal. Sounds like Bergevin isn't even going to come back as the GM next year. So there's a lot of stuff going on up there. Carey Price, again, he's not playing right now. So it's just a dumpster fire in Montreal. And I don't see them clawing their way back. I don't know if I'm trying to decide if I like this move. Part of me likes it because they're getting worked. And he's a young player. You don't want to kill his confidence. So send him down, get him some ice time, find his game. But the other part of me is he's clearly capable of playing in the NHL. I mean,
absolutely.
He showed it last year, and he's one of your best offensive weapons that you have. So it's kind of, the season ain't done yet. I don't know. This feels like it's thrown in the towel a little bit. So
who knows? I mean, this could be like one of like 1,000 different things behind it. You would think it's either for performance or conditioning. Off the top of your head, who knows? I mean, you mentioned it. Weber out, Byron out, Carey Price out, Matthew Perreault out, Gallagher's day to day, right?
Yeah, they lose Philip Deneau.
Exactly.
Now Nick Suzuki's getting paid monster money for basically doing jack shit.
Now, that being said, I think, when Mac and I were high on this team, we're looking at this roster and we're going, okay, you bring in Christian Dvorak, Jonathan Drouin comes back into the lineup this year. Like, Arturi Lehkonen, solid piece. You bring in a guy like Cedric Paquette, just help the Lightning win 2 Stanley Cups. I mean, these are good pieces that they have here. Yeah, they're definitely hurting, on the back end, not having Price, not having Weber. Byron up front, I think, really kills them.
Petrie has sucked so far.
Petrie has not looked good.
I think he has 1 point.
Yeah. So it's just and I think you're right. I think at this point we can go, did playing in that North Division really just, did they just match up against those teams really well? And did it just fit for them? And clearly they're having a hard time now. And, we said this at the beginning of the year 1,000 times, you fall behind in the Atlantic or the Metro, you're not going to be able to catch up.
It's true. It's true. And I don't think that they're going to be quite this bad the entire season, but I do not think they're going to make the playoffs. And people forget, they built all this like 2-year momentum swing. They built it when they beat the Penguins in the bubble, and they weren't even supposed to be in the playoffs if the season had finished. And people forget that. And here we are. So I've said they're a COVID team for 2 years now. Last year they shoved it up my ass, right? I mean, they got a little bit exposed in the finals, but who wouldn't against a team like the Lightning were last year?
Yeah,
but now it's showing. So.
Yeah, they need to get it together and soon, or else it's only going to get worse from there. The San Jose Sharks, they had 7 players along with their head coach, Bob Bugner, that got placed in COVID-19 protocol prior to their matchup against the Jets on Saturday. That included defenseman Erik Karlsson, Jake Middleton, Radim Simek, Marc-Edouard Vlasic, as well as forwards Andrew Cogliano, Jonathan Dahlin, and Matt Nieto. I think it's also worth pointing out that Logan Couture was under the weather and did not play on Saturday, though that's not due to COVID protocol.
Yeah, I am going to talk a little bit more about the Sharks later in the gambling portion of this episode, but they looked good to start, and now they don't look good at all, and they look like that cold morning dump that I've talked about several times on this podcast. So,
even though that cold morning dump is now on the Flyers, but
yes, I'm going to talk about the team instead of Martin Jones.
I think it's accurate at this point. I mean, they had a great start. It's sort of like that firework, where you light it and the fuse is like, hissing all the way down, and it's looking like it's going to be really, really good, gets to the bottom and just poof, nothing.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
Speaking of the opposite of that, the Hurricanes stay undefeated and the Coyotes stay winless. The Hurricanes are the last standing unbeaten team in the NHL at 8-0-0, extending the best start to a season in franchise history. Carolina's winning streak is also tied for the fourth longest to begin a season in NHL history.
Wagon. Complete and total wagon. And we knew it before the start of the year, but goddamn, man, they look good. Like they're deep. So I would say
this is a cup contending team right here.
Yeah, I'd say this is probably the cup favorite right now. And obviously being 8-0 will do that, but they look good, man. That's a tough team to play against. Everybody can score. Everybody can chip in. The D-men are insane. Frederick Anderson's playing out of his mind. So all things look good in Carolina right now.
And do we have anything to say about Arizona, or is it just fix the team or move at this point?
I don't. So I'm actually going to confess to this. I did bet the Coyotes to win this last night. I did not publish that because I wouldn't advise anybody to do that, but figured plus 300. They haven't won yet. The Hurricanes are undefeated. The Canes played the night before. I thought maybe they'll get them on a tired night and somehow squeak this out. It was a close game, but no cigar for me. So yeah, the Yotes, they absolutely suck.
You would just think at this point with them, why not just blow it up? But like try and blow it up. Like do what Buffalo was doing for the last 2 years. Do what the Red Wings did for the last 2 years.
They're like half blowing it up. It's like, well, just
commit to it. Like,
yeah, just do it.
Like be bad. Like you're trying not to be bad. And then your result is you're bad. So it's just like, come on, man.
Shane, or who is it this year? Shane Wright, the Shane Wright sweepstakes.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see.
Who knows? Your boy Sid the Kid returned to the Penguins lineup Saturday against the New Jersey Devils. He missed the first 7 games of the season after undergoing wrist surgery. Thoughts on his return?
That game was weird. I watched the entire thing. Nico Hischier is now full-time against Sid. Now that Zajak's gone, it always used to be Zajac when he was on the Devils, but Hischier shut him down, man. The Pens had some really good chances, but at the end of the day, couldn't get the job done. So tough game. No points for Sid in his return, which is a rarity. He's usually really good in his return game. So I don't know. Devils are a good, fast, young team. Don't have much more thoughts other than that.
Yeah, it's a tough matchup if you're in the Metro and you see the Devils on your schedule. You're like, this one could go either way.
Yeah, exactly. You never know what you're going to get, but they are nasty. I think they're going to make some noise.
Yeah. Real quick before we hop into the interview with John Walton, we just wanted to recap the 3 stars of the week from NHL.com. The 3rd star is Alex Killorn. He had 4 goals and 2 assists for 6 points. Drake Batherson, 3 goals and 3 apples for 6 points. I think he's had a great start to this year. Looked awesome against the Caps the other night. And then Jacob Markstrom, 3 wins on the season, a 0.33 GAA, a 989 save percentage, and 2 shutouts.
Yeah.
Those are numbers.
Calgary's cooking. Those numbers look like create a pro in NHL 22 type numbers. I've never seen 0.33 GAA. That's pretty insane. Actually, I'll say that stat when we get to the gambling portion, so I'll save it.
Cool. Let's go ahead and toss it off to John Walton. But before we do, we just want to remind everyone that summer may be over, but there's still never been a better chance to get out on the water. Are you looking to finance that new boat or yacht you've always dreamed of? Well, you're in luck because the Yacht Lender is a specialist in marine finance. With partnerships with 15 different banks, he is the right lender for whatever vessel you may be in the market for. Backed by Trident Funding with over 25 years as an industry leader, the Yacht Lender has the expertise and know-how to finance the boat of your dreams. Don't wait. Apply today at www.yachtlender.com or check him out on Instagram @yachtlender to see others who have already gotten out on the water. Let's go ahead and toss it off to John Walton right now. It's now my pleasure to welcome to the Empty Betters podcast, the radio voice of your Washington Capitals, Mr. John Walton. John, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today.
Of course. Good to be with you guys. Thanks for having me.
So just getting hopped into everything here. I know you're from Ohio, so why don't you tell us a little bit about where you came from and how you got into broadcasting in the first place?
Well, I started, broadcasting in Ohio. I started in Ohio because that's where I was born. But when I was 2.5, we moved to Minnesota. So the hockey interest came from living on the west side of Minneapolis and going to originally Minnesota Gopher games and North Stars games originally. And it's kind of funny for me because there were so many guys, there were so many trades when I was a kid, high school, between the Caps and the North Stars. You pick up the Caps media guy, there's a whole lot of guys I knew, with Don Beaupre, Etienne Duchesne, Mike Gartner, Brian McClellan played for the North Stars for a little while when I was there. So there's a lot of familiar faces that I ended up being associated with later on with a very different employer. But being a North Stars fan kind of brought me to the game originally. And then my mother got tired of the winters and we moved back to Ohio just before high school. So Ohio, if you don't know it, at least the part I was in, is kind of a hockey wasteland. So it was a little bit of a culture shock for me. There was some youth hockey around, but at the time, there wasn't even an ECHL team in Cincinnati, and that's where I was pretty close to. So getting started at Miami University and calling games there is how I got started, and started in student radio and moved up to real radio. And I just kind of kept making steps here or there. I didn't go in a straight line necessarily to get to Washington, but that's where it all started for me.
For sure. I know it's funny you say that, like, it's not necessarily a straight line. When we had Joe on, he talked about, he got into broadcasting because he got hurt. Was that something that you more actively wanted to pursue just because you had that communications background?
Well, let's be clear. Joe B is a better athlete than me. So he had that probably. He's a terrific golfer and we play a lot, and he beats me into the turf pretty regularly. But, for me, it was something that I always gravitated toward radio, television. From an early age. And I think sometime around teenage years, I started kind of putting that together with my love of sports in general, but hockey maybe specifically. I love baseball. I was a football fan up until about 1995, as I was a Browns fan. And when they moved to Baltimore, it kind of felt like I had my team ripped from me. It was about the time I started doing hockey too. So I don't watch as much football as others do. I do. I watch the Super Bowl. I actually went to the Ravens game with my son when they played the Bengals a couple of weeks ago. But for the most part, it's been hockey and baseball. And when that started becoming a thing for me, where I thought, well, maybe this is, I was always drawn to the announcers, whether it be, Marty Brenneman when he was with the Reds, who I got to work with later on. Dan Kelly did the Blues and Ken Wilson. KMOX had a big stick at night, 50,000 watts. So when I lived in Minnesota and when I lived in Ohio, you could get a St. Louis station pretty easily. So I would listen to those. And, I think that's where it started. By the time I got to college, I said, that sounds like a really fun career idea. How am I going to do it? I have no earthly idea, but I just started with student radio and kind of took it from there.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, did you have any role models that you looked up to in terms of their style when you were growing up? Or is there anyone, in present day that you think, man, I really like the commentating style that they have?
Well, Mike Emerick's the greatest of all time. He's so good at what he does from a vocabulary standpoint, from an energy standpoint, from a human being standpoint. I got to know him quite a bit when I was in Hershey because he actually lived in Hershey for 5 years when he did the Flyers, and would take the train to Philadelphia every day, do the game, and was more of a small town guy. And the Hersey Bears were a team that he was kind of a fan of. So he would go and watch the Bears. He's definitely on the list. Ken Wilson, who did the St. Louis Blues for me, I occasionally will throw in an "oh baby," and that's pointed at something he used to say. That's anytime there's a really big moment in a game, he's like, "Oh, what a Bill baby, what a save by Curtis Joseph." And I think there's some patterns that, you get a little bit from lots of places. Nobody has their own, like, they don't operate in a vacuum. We all grew up with sports. We all had favorite announcers. We all had, stylistically things that we were big fans of. And, for him, he was right. Marty Brenneman, until just a couple of years ago, was the voice of the Reds, and Marty just told it like it was. And he didn't care. Like, Ken Griffey Jr. hated him, like, when they were there. And one of the greatest stories I ever heard. This was actually when I worked for the Reds. I was the public address announcer, kind of like what Wes Johnson is for us. That's what I did with the Reds. And Marty came up one day and he was so prideful. He's like, I just got into it with Ken Griffey Jr. And I'll leave out some of the F-bombs that went through it, but he basically said, I was here when your dad was here. I'll be here long after you're gone. I was like, can you imagine, like, me or Joe B going up to Alex Ovechkin and saying something like that, like not in a million years, but that's who he was. Like he was as in your face as anybody. They broke the mold with him. And he called a game like that too. So, that I think kind of call it like it is. I mean, if somebody's not playing well, I'm going to say so. And thankfully I have an employer that allows me to do that, which I'm grateful for.
Yeah, I also wanted to ask you, just while it's fresh in my head, because I know this was something that came up when we were talking to Joe B, and he was telling us that for him, he never incorporated into his style like premeditated calls, I guess you would say. So you'll probably take this as a compliment, as you should, but I'm a diehard Penguins fan, and I'm the only one on the podcast who is. So your voice kind of haunts me in my sleep sometimes. But just based on that call, and I've listened to you in the car before, it doesn't seem like you're too big into the premeditated stuff. Like I've listened to Mike Lang for years, and he's got his famous catchphrases after every goal. I'm just wondering where your stance is on that.
Well, just quick on Mike Lang, an amazing human being. And Mike told me, it's funny that day, and I guess kind of leading up to that call, Mike is a small part of it, because you can't script anything. You don't know how it's going to go. You can't think ahead of time. I mean, even when the team was in Vegas winning the Stanley Cup, they're up 3-1 and it looks pretty good, but they're behind after 2. You don't know how it's going to go. And I remember Mike Lang coming in the booth before Game 6, and he was always so good with his time, and he was just an incredibly nice man, and wishing him all the best in retirement. But he was kind of telling me what he'd been around the block way more than me. And he was saying before the game, keep in mind, Pittsburgh, of course, had won back-to-back, and it is so hard to do, as Tampa Bay is about to find out, by the way. And you get to the second round of a third go around, you only have so much in the tank. And the tipping point had gone the other way toward Washington. And Mike had been there, done that, and knew what was about to happen. I think he knew Washington was going to win that night. And I think he realized it was the end of an unbelievably great run for Pittsburgh. And he told me before the game that he said, you are going to be places where every night you go to the rink, it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And just when you think it can't, it does again. And then you'll turn around and you will see everybody in this game that you've ever thought of or talked about or seen on television is suddenly going to be standing there. I think he knew Washington was destined to go all the way. I didn't. Up until I'd seen too many Pittsburgh horror shows to really gather that one in. But I still remember him talking to me before the game and thinking, wow, maybe this is really going to happen. And it goes to overtime. And then I'd long forgotten what he had said, because overtime in Pittsburgh, there's a good chance this isn't going to end well and go back. And then the call happened. So in that moment, I had no idea what was going to come out of my mouth. And I think anyone that does, this is not something that you can script. You have to rely on your brain spitting out the right words at the right time to try and capture the moment the best you can. And when it's over, you just hope you got it right. And, with Kuzi, I was pretty happy with it. It was so sudden because, it was just a quick transition up ice, Ovi was a spectator basically by that point. And is this going to go or not? And it was just a matter of it seemed like an eternity, but it was only a couple of seconds. And when it went in, it's just whatever comes out of your mouth. And my color commentator, Ken Sabrin, was busy beating me on the shoulder at the time I was talking. So we had not seen anything like that in these parts for 20 years. So not any real scripting of any kind. I mean, you can kind of have an idea swirling around maybe in those moments leading up to something like that. Like, what if this really does happen? But that's, at least for me, that's kind of where it stops.
Well, you absolutely nailed it. I vividly remember driving a lot faster home from my bartending job in college with your voice on the radio than I probably should have been going to get home during the second period of that game. And, as hockey guys go, we're a little bit superstitious. So the Caps, for whatever reason, always seem to blow it when Doc's on the call and I'm watching. So I had the NBC broadcast on, but the TV on mute, and then an actual radio with your voice going the whole time.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, I think that, it's funny that, I've done a little bit of national stuff enough to know that I did a Carolina Tampa game in the second round, and both fan bases equally hated me because both of them knew where I came from. And whenever Carolina was doing something well, the Tampa people don't like you, and the Carolina people were on you when Tampa Bay started doing something well. So, the national people a lot of times can't win. I found that out, but that's okay. I like being with a team. John Forsland went to Seattle, I think, for that reason, because he becomes such a national figure. But being with a team and being around the same group of guys and getting to know who they are, that's a fun thing. And, yeah, of course, I'm passionate about the Capitals, and of course I want the Caps to win. I like getting paid every 2 weeks. I would like them to continue to do well, both financially and on the ice. So, there is a little bias there, but I also firmly believe that when things aren't going well, or if there's a reason why, when Evgeny Kuznetsov hasn't been what he's needed to be the last few years, we've said so. And when, even this year, like, I'd like to see more out of Anthony Mantha, and, but, those kinds of things, we're a little more biased toward maybe hoping for those things to happen, as opposed to, calling it straight down the middle. And you do wear that different hat. I had a couple of Caps games that were national, and putting that aside, is it's not as hard as you might think. I know the Caps, but you have a responsibility to the audience on both sides to call it down the middle. And Joe has, done that a lot more than I have. And we'll tell you too, that's sometimes not the easiest thing in the world, but it's just something you got to balance when you do it.
For sure. You got a great taste of that, gelling as a team when you were in Hershey. Not only were you the radio voice there, but you were also the team's communications director, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I did PR. So game notes, and it was, in the minors, no matter where you are, and Hershey's the best place to be outside the National Hockey League. It's a big job. I mean, you're getting on the bus, and it's a 3-3, and you're Friday night one place and doing game notes, and you're using the bus ride home, and you weren't going to bed anyway, and getting it done, and then getting up and doing it again on a Saturday. And the 3-3s are where, if you're a player, a broadcaster, players especially, of course, but man, it's hard. There's not a lot of prep time, and your throat's kind of had it from 10,000 people on a Saturday night. And hey, there's this 3:00 game the next day, and that part was hard, but being able to balance all of those things, yeah. And the Bears, of course, were winning a ton during that time, so that did make the long nights a little bit easier.
Calder Cups in 06, 09, and 2010, if I'm not mistaken, and a lot of future Capitals on those teams. Who were some of the players that stood out to you?
Oh, well, I mean, my life changed for the better when the Caps affiliated with Hershey, and that came in 2005. We'd been with Colorado, and the Avs didn't really have much of a farm system left by that point. They had been trading out picks, and we didn't have much. We weren't very good. I hadn't even seen a team win a playoff series since I got there, going into my fourth year. And then affiliated with Washington, and Bruce Boudreau came in. And Mike Green was a rookie defenseman for us in that first Calder Cup year in 05-06. Dave Steckel was on that team. There were others, but it was actually not only 3 cups, but they went to 4 finals in 5 years. They won in 06. They went back to the final in 07 and were breezing through, just annihilating everybody. Like, got through the first 3 rounds. I mean, they barely lost. I think they lost twice, and get to the final, and they're playing Hamilton, who had won just enough games to finish in 3rd place in the regular season, but caught fire in the playoffs because they had a guy in goal named Carey Price. So it's amazing how quickly things got shut down. We lost in 5. We were gone fast. Couldn't put a thing through them. And then Bruce, the following year, came to Washington. That was an out in the first round. But then, as you said, beat Corey Schneider in 09. And then beat Texas. Jamie Benn was on the team in 10. John Carlson, Carl Alsner. I mean, on defense, I mean, you've got those 2 guys and Jeff Schultz. That's basically half of the Caps defensive core, and they were big parts of the last 2. And Alexander Giroux, who was only here a little bit, but at the AHL level, the guy was crazy. He scored 60 goals.
Ridiculous.
In a year that the Caps ended up winning 60, or the Bears rather won 60 games. And then 16 more playoff games, 76 wins, a record that'll never be broken in the AHL. There are teams that might go 3 years and not win 76 games. So a lot of fun during those years.
I remember watching a little bit of his games just when I was in middle and high school. Did he ever get a sniff at the NHL at all?
Was that Giroux?
Yeah.
He was here a little bit. He was just a step slow. He's one of those guys. He was a tweener. Like, he was too good for the AHL, but just couldn't. He wasn't big, and he wasn't quite the guy that could get enough foot speed. I mean, at the AHL level, he could find time and space, and when he did, he was lethal. And Keith Aucoin, who's actually going to the AHL Hall of Fame this year, was dishing him pucks, and Keith was as good as that as anybody. And between the two of them, I think the one year they ended up together with 240 points. Just crazy numbers.
Wow.
Both well into triple digits. And Giroux ended up with 60 goals, and Aucoin, I think, had 115 points himself. I mean, it was crazy. But those guys it was a perfect storm. I mean, for 5 years, it was the best 5-year run in Bears history, and they've been around 84 years now, and there's never been a 5-year run like it. It was just very lucky for me that I got some championship experience by the time I got to this level, that I'd seen what that looks like by the time you get to June, and it was a fun thing to be a part of.
Sure.
I'm just curious with the, not to talk too much on the AHL, but with the nature of, how young guys are treated when they come in and they're high picks nowadays. And, the Caps have been a really good franchise for over 10 plus years now. What do you think attributes the most to why Hershey is like the cornerstone franchise in the AHL, even though the Caps are always so good?
They have a hockey town that where hockey is everything. I mean, you have the town itself only has 28,000 people, but you got 10,000 seats. It's kind of like what Texas high school football is like. It's kind of like that, where it's what you do on a Saturday night in central Pennsylvania, and they demand excellence too. I've heard many a boo bird. The boo birds come out way quicker in Hershey than they do in Washington. And it's a good training ground for those guys. And you're around, back when I was there, you were around a lot of media too. So you were used to giving interviews, and the TVs would come out, and the newspapers. That's not quite as much anymore, but the blogs are still there, and they still do a good job too. So there's a lot of growing up. I think it happened to me. I mean, when I got there in 2002, I mean, I'd only had 3 years of professional hockey experience at that point. And the guy who was there before me had just gone to the NHL, and they looked at me as like, well, who are you? And, you've got to prove yourself just like the players do. And I think that's a great teaching ground for anyone in the hockey business. And so many people have come from there, but it's just, they demand excellence. They don't hang division banners in the ceiling. I don't know, outside of Toronto, I think and Montreal, I think, are the only two teams in the NHL that do the same. Division championships don't mean anything here. We only hang championships in the rafters. And for Hershey, they got 11 of them. They would like a 12th, but they're not going to litter the ceiling with anything. It's not a Calder Cup title.
Yeah.
So moving on from your time in Hershey, in 2011, you get the call to go and call games on the radio for the Caps. When we had Joe and Craig on, it was interesting. They talked about, coming in the 90s, building up with this team, watching the young guns grow. You come into this team where the young guns by 2011 are pretty well established. Alex Ovechkin is one of the NHL's premier players, if not its most explosive. What was that transition like for you?
I remember the first preseason game that I did in the fall of 2011, and just watching preseason speed at the NHL level. I mean, you watch games on TV, but it's not the same when you're in the press box. And what does that look like? And it is a much faster game, even in the preseason. And then you've got Alex Ovechkin, who even in preseason form is still just a spectacle to watch. And yeah, I knew I landed in something pretty good, especially with a team that, it's funny. I mean, they came out of the blocks 7-0 that year, and Bruce Boudreau, who had a very quick second round exit the year before against the Lightning, and was, trying to, keep it going a little bit after what had been a heck of a run. The upset, of course, in 2010 in Montreal, but they just couldn't get it done in the playoffs. And Bruce, unfortunately for me, had to pay for it with his job just before Thanksgiving that year. And so for me, I mean, the guy that I was around in Hershey, and I mean, he and I are friends to this day, and that was hard. That was like the first reality check for me that, it's all business up here. And, I'd only been here about 40 days to that point. And, then there were a lot of up and downs that first year. So I learned a lot. The team, it's funny, you talk about the young guns and being established, but the team itself, they managed to get in the playoffs under Dale Hunter, even though they were out of the postseason picture on St. Patrick's Day. They ended up getting in, and then went all the way to Game 7 in the second round, almost, got to a conference final. So it was a weird year. Adam Oates came in and won a division title that, the old Southeast wasn't very much that year, and they got escorted pretty quickly by the Rangers and then missed the playoffs, and then he was gone. So, you get used to pretty quick that, things change. If you're not winning, things are going to change. And, but the speed, and Alex Ovechkin himself on any given night is, be ready at any moment. I don't care if he doesn't have a shot on goal through 2 periods, and there are nights like that. I saw him do that against the Kings about a month before the pause, where the Caps weren't playing very well and Ovi wasn't there. And then all of a sudden, boom, 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 hat trick, 3rd period, beat the Kings. Thank you very much.
In like the last 8 minutes, right?
Yeah. It was crazy. Yeah. And so something like that, I mean, with Alex, you got to always be ready.
I do have one question that I always like to ask the commentators that we bring on, and you doing a little bit of both of TV and radio. What's your different approach to the two? Is there a different style when you're doing radio versus television?
Yeah, there is. Radio, if I don't say it, you don't know it. So you've got to try and find a way to artfully and with word economy to paint the picture as quickly as you can, because the game moves fast. And some of that's pitch and tone of voice. I mean, if I'm starting to rev up, something's about to happen. It's not always with words, but some of the words that you use, I mean, you're trying to get from one zone to the next, and you don't want to, if you're on every word and you're talking 1,000,000 miles an hour, that's one of the mistakes I think young broadcasters make in their early going, is you want to try and say everything, which is good, but you got to find quicker ways to say things. And on radio, that's what we try and do. Everything's got to be said. In TV, you let it breathe a little bit. I don't have to tell you if it's on the far side of the ice or the near side of the ice. You know that. You're watching. You may not know who the puck carrier is, but you can see where he is on the ice. So I'm not going to give you maybe that kind of description. The color analyst is, I think, more important they're important in both, but they're really important in TV, especially when you've got somebody like Craig, who, played for so many years, and now he and Joe for 25 years have done this together. I mean, they roll out of bed with no notes and put on a spectacular show. They just know each other so well. But that balance is important, because your analyst is going to be able to tell you things that the play-by-play guy doesn't have to keep going. If Ken Savern on the radio side goes on too long, and he knows to cut it pretty short, because if he's describing something in detail and a game's going on, you don't know what's happening. So he's drilling down on a certain point, but he generally will do that in stoppages, because the play-by-play guy on radio has to keep going a little bit more to give you the full flavor of what's happening. So it is different, but I think, and both have their pluses and minuses. TV's fun. TV's a lot more makeup. TV's a lot more rehearsal, and, the 3 minutes that you're trying to put together for the beginning of the show, you'll spend more time on that sometimes than you do the actual game. When the game goes, you're like, hey, the game's the game. Just kind of, dial back maybe to about 75% of what you do on radio, and let your analyst have a little bit more room. But other than that, it's a lot of similarities, just a few nuanced differences.
Very cool. Fast forwarding a little bit, 16, 17, 18, those were all really, really deep Capitals teams, very strong Capitals teams. The argument can be made that the 16 and 17 teams could have potentially been stronger or deeper than the 18 team. What do you remember about that, sort of the run up to the run? And when in 18 did you realize something was different?
I think this first 16 and 17, and I would even say 15, just because the first year that Barry Trotz was here, I thought that team was primed for a run when they went in against the Rangers in the second round and building up that 3-1 lead. Ward gets the goal in game 1 to win it right in the last minute, and they'd won the President's Trophy, and now they're on the ropes. I just think, what Barry Trotz had put in place, I thought everybody bought in, and it all came apart. Just, a bad penalty here, a clunker of a game 6, a game 7, it goes to overtime, and now it's a flip of the coin. And Derek Stepan's goal, that was probably the hardest for me ever of the 11 years I've had here.
Same.
Even, the Pittsburgh stuff was hard. But Pittsburgh was opportunistic. And in the end, Pittsburgh was the better team. I don't know that the Rangers were. I think the Caps were in 15, and it didn't feel like that's the way that one should have ended. Pittsburgh had an uncanny knack in those 2 years of, no matter what the Caps did, it was always an opportunistic team on the other side, that you make one mistake and somebody's going to put it in the back of the net, and you can just see the shoulder slumping and you hear the reaction in the stands. You asked me when I thought it was different in 18. I knew it was different when a goal that was scored by the opposition didn't deflate the building. Even Brian McClellan has said this in a couple of postmortems on seasons. I mean, the fans get down, the momentum in the building is dead. I mean, it's like, the patient's heart stopped, and you can't get it restarted. And everybody's expecting, oh, here we go. It's the Caps again, crashing in the second round. If it's Pittsburgh, or it's the Rangers, or it's somebody else. In game 5 against Pittsburgh, Caps got outshot in the second period, like 18-3. Like, it looked like, oh, here we go. Pittsburgh's revving up again. And the Caps came back roaring in the third, scored 4 times. And I remember looking at the people down below me, they can't believe this is even real life, that a team like the Caps can come back against the Penguins and rev up and do it. And I think it was at that point, that was the turning point for me. Obviously, Kuznetsov winning, then you find yourself after a terrific series with Tampa Bay. Here you are in Las Vegas. I mean, it was surreal to go there for game 1. I mean, a team I thought we were going to Winnipeg. I was delightfully surprised, to be honest.
How cool is that atmosphere? It's insane. I went to a game there once. It's nuts.
It is so loud that if you have a glass of water, and I made this mistake once, on your countertop next to your gear, it will vibrate off. You will see like the sound waves, like Jurassic Park with you see the liquid going. That's what it looks like. And yeah, game 1, it was insane. Game 2 was insane, but the Caps win. And by the time we got back for game 5, the pregame was, well, here we are. See what happens. Now it's 3-1, and the atmosphere was definitely a lot different, and so many Caps fans were there, and it was just an incredible night. But I think game 5, second round for me, was where it all changed, and I think everybody in this town believed as one that they weren't going to get denied this time.
For sure. I remember you saying even, you've never seen, more red sweaters at a road hockey game before. I remember looking at the stands and being like, it could be a home game for them, right before game 5.
Yeah, it was nuts. I mean, there were so many, and it was cool because a lot of them were in the upper deck. And if you're a Vegas fan and you have the tickets to sell, I mean, look, your team's not winning tonight, and Caps fans would mortgage their house and take a second loan out if they had to be there. So there was money to be made. It was capitalism at its best, I suppose. But I think it was the majority. It was a slim majority, but I think at least half the building dressed in red.
I think one of the best pictures I saw from the Cup celebration wasn't on the ice itself. It was you and Kenny Sabs almost tackling each other in the booth. What was that process like for you guys?
That was fun. Kenny's one of my best friends, and I'd met him in Hershey. He'd come up for a Calder Cup final one year, and I didn't really know him that well. And we've traveled together. You have meals together. Where our families know each other. We had the Cup together, and lots of pictures that came from that, and it's been terrific. So I mean, to be able to be a part of that. He was a Black Ace on the team that won in Calgary in '89. He has a ring from that. His name didn't appear on the Cup for that, but he had seen what it was like as a player, and it was kind of fun for me to see him do this as a broadcaster this time. And, capturing those final moments and being able to describe it for everybody was something I'll never forget. And I was glad Ben Raby took that picture, and I was glad he did, because we were jumping around pretty good. I mean, it was incredible. By the time that you got to the end of it, I mean, you describe what's going on. That moment actually came a couple minutes after. I think Ben had chimed in by that point, and that's when he took it. But business first. But then it was really a great moment. We ran downstairs. We didn't come here to watch this from up top. We want to get down there.
I can't believe I'm just realizing this, but I'm pretty sure I played with Ken's son, Jake, if I'm not mistaken. He was a goalie.
Yeah, you did then, because Jake is a goalie. Yeah, that is Ken's his dad.
I don't know why I just put the dots together, but we just had a watch party with some old teammates of mine, and they were saying, about Ken Saber. I was like, why did I never realize this? So that's pretty funny, actually. And just for the sake of time, because we don't want to keep you too long, but just kind of want to see what your feeling is with the team this season. I think the Caps are off to a pretty good start. Kind of pains me to say that. As I mentioned earlier, I'm a Pens fan. So your young guys look good. Ovi first star of the month. What do you think?
I think they've got a pretty good team. I think Pittsburgh and Washington are in the same boat, that everything in the salary cap era kind of follows the old circle of life. And Sidney Crosby on one side and Alex Ovechkin on the other. Both teams are trying to keep that window open for generational talents that don't come along every day. And I think that Pittsburgh, despite a ton of injuries, has been able to get through fairly well. I think the Caps got off to a nice start with what was a little bit of a softer schedule, if we're being honest. Arizona is not going to be sniffing a playoff anytime soon. Detroit actually impressed me. I thought they were better than I thought they were going to be. But the Caps didn't really have to travel. They only had 2 road games. This is going to be where the rubber meets the road for the Caps in November. And I think that their defense really impresses me. We heard about Trevor Van Riemsdyk and all that, for a guy that never really got a chance to play in Carolina very much. I think he fits in nice. I think they all jump up in the play. Nick Jensen is playing as well as I've ever seen him, even now that doesn't have Zdeno Chara as a line mate anymore. They're pretty good on defense. I think they're going to go as far as their goaltending will let them. They're going to score some goals. They've hit some injury woes that they haven't seen in years here, to have Brett Leeson come up and Alexi Protas come up and to Henrik Lapierre hanging around for at least a little while longer. And I think that, getting those kids that's good, because you're getting them some experience for the future when, the core ages out and you need to replace them. But I see this team as a playoff team. I don't see them as a division winner, quite frankly, because I think that's going to belong to Carolina. I think the Hurricanes have no weaknesses. I'm a little surprised at how good a start the Rangers are off to, but I'm not that surprised. I think they're going to be in the mix. The Flyers are going to be in the mix. And then there's Pittsburgh and Washington. So somebody I just said there is probably not going to make the playoffs if 4 teams go. And that's a really good team that's going to miss. So I think for every team out there, Washington included, every 2 points this year is going to matter. And I think they're, potential home ice first round, second place. I think Carolina is just quicker. I think that's a tough matchup for them, but I think they're a playoff team. And I still think that, listen, as long as Alex Ovechkin is scoring goals around here, they're never going to be out of any game they're in.
Absolutely. And I think just, every game that these Metro opponents and even the guys in the Atlantic have to play outside of those divisions are going to be huge just to make up points, because both of those teams could send 4 teams to the playoffs.
Yeah. And, I think when you look at what the Florida Panthers have done, and then you've got Tampa Bay, you've got Toronto, and you've got Boston. I mean, if all those teams make the playoffs, that's 4 in the other division. So that's going to limit you to 4. And who knows? I mean, things can change in both divisions, but, there's a real chance that, if you don't have, if you have any sort of swoon at all, that, you can go from riding like you're riding high and you're doing a pretty good job, and then suddenly you're scrapping. And don't forget, for the Caps and Penguins, both older teams and a compressed schedule with the Olympics and having that month off, a lot of guys from the Caps are going to be at the Olympics. And how does that affect things? There's a lot in play that's going to be real interesting by the time we get to April.
Speaking of the Olympics, you got a chance to go over to Pyeongchang in 2018 and call some women's hockey games. What was that experience like?
It was, I got the Stanley Cup and an Olympic experience in a span of about 4 months. So it was busy. It was crazy, but that was amazing.
When did you sleep?
You know what? I mean, I missed the Caps, of course, but you know what? It was nuts because I would try and keep tabs with what was going on back here, but the games were, middle of the night, in the morning. So a lot of times I was getting up to find out what had happened. I didn't really get to hear many of them live. It's a 14-hour time change between Pyeongchang and Washington. So it was hard, but I'll tell you, I did 14 games over there, and just being around what seemed like the center of everything that was being looked at on the planet at one time. And, just being in the village and experiencing the culture and eating the food and being able to call hockey. I mean, hockey's taken me places I never would have dreamed possible. And Vegas, after a Stanley Cup win, I couldn't have pictured that when I was in college, but here we are, a team in Vegas, and that's where the Caps end up winning. But the same thing with being in Asia and, just experiencing something so far away out your comfort zone and being there for, I was there for more than 3 weeks. That was a really special time.
For sure.
Yeah. It's a hell of a 2018, but John, we really appreciate you joining us. I know we're keeping you a little long here. So, thank you again. It means a lot to us.
Well, fellas, appreciate it. And good luck with the show here. You're lining up guests left and right. I wish you the best of luck moving forward.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Big thanks to John for chatting with us. Such a nice guy. It was great getting to know him a little bit at the golf tournament and to catch up with him and chat now of, it's just so cool. I mean, the guy I'll always remember that just because of the cup run, his call on Kuzi's goal. How do you feel about that one personally?
Let's get to the next segment, please. Thank you. Yeah. I admitted to him in the interview that, his voice haunts me in my sleep from that Kuzi call. So yeah, I don't sleep easy listening to his voice.
Yeah, well said.
And I think he likes it that way.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we all do. Some injuries to get to. Nikita Kucherov is going to be out 8 to 10 weeks following surgery on his lower body. So not the entire season like Tampa hoped. I guess they're just going to have to try and push him down the stairs or something to make up the remainder of those injury days. William Karlsson is going to be out 6 weeks with a broken foot. That's brutal if you're Vegas. Drew Doughty is going to miss 8 weeks as he recovers from tibial plateau contusion. Just doesn't sound
nice pronunciations there, Mr. Manella.
Just doesn't sound good at all. Bad news for Caps fans out there. Oshie is week to week with a lower body injury. Also, in regards to the Caps, Nick Dowd is not going to play against the Bolts tonight. We're recording this on Monday, November 1st. And the Caps did recall Alexei Protas from Hershey as a result of that. So not good down the middle right now for Caps fans at all. Jack Hughes is out at least 5 more weeks with his shoulder injury than the New Jersey Devils originally thought. I don't know if he's going to have surgery, but he did dislocate it, so that's not good. Extensions to get to real quick. Ross Johnston for the Islanders, 4 years at $1.1 million per, and Zach Whitecloud gets 6 years from the Knights at a $2.75 AAV. The speculation is that this was done to help make a run at Jack Eichel. And then the big one that came across the wire 3 or 4 hours ago, right?
Something like that, yeah.
The Toronto Maple Leafs signed defenseman Morgan Rielly to an 8-year contract extension with an AAV of $7.5 million.
Oh my God. The drama continues to build for the Stars in Toronto. I sent it to you guys on Instagram. I'm not going to try to scroll and find it, but I think it's 5 of their players, Tavares, Nylander, Marner, Matthews, and Rielly, will make up for 57% of their cap.
It's north of 50%.
Okay. Yeah. It's not. So they're definitely making up over half the team. If I could find it, I would. I just don't feel like scrolling right now, but we'll say somewhere around 60%. I believe it's pretty close to that.
Yep.
That's nuts. Look, man, he deserves it. And when you look at what Seth Jones just got paid and how shitty he's played so far this year, I guess you could look at this and say, ooh, it's a bargain. I think he could have probably gotten more than that too. He took kind of a hometown discount here. Likable guy, great defenseman. He can skate like the wind. He can break out the puck himself. I like the move. It's just, you got to think one of those pieces is going to end up getting shifted somewhere. And
at this point, they have to, because
I would say it has to be Marner or Tavares, one of the two.
Yeah. And this point, I think this contract, if they don't move one of those pieces, is a franchise killer, because you can keep these, 5 superstars.
Yeah.
Which is more than, most other teams can afford anyways. But
right.
When push comes to shove, guys are going to have to be re-signed. Guys that aren't those 5 are going to have to be re-signed, and you're not going to have the money to do it.
Yeah, it's an interesting tactic. I'll give Dubas credit though, man. If you're a player, you probably want to put your life on the line for him. He's as loyal as they get. So we'll see how it goes in Toronto. They've just won 2 straight, so things are looking up a little bit, but we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go ahead and to get into some gambling stuff. But before we do, I think you have a word for us from our buddies at Sharp Rank.
Sure. So before we move on, we just want to remind you that this season, all of our picks are powered by Sharp Rank. Sharp Rank created the first ever cross-sport rating system, ranking bettors from any sport on one leaderboard that anyone can dominate, even you. Sharp Rank is backed by some of the biggest names in the sports gambling world, such as BetMGM, Betway, and Sports Illustrated. Download the free app for iPhone and Android today. Thank you, SharpRank, for sponsoring this gambling segment. So let's get into it. Just a couple things to note before we get into real specific trends. Some of these teams, just want to give you guys an idea of how they're doing lately. So Carolina, 8 in a row, unbeaten. You already know.
Red hot.
Speaking of red hot, no pun intended, Calgary. They have the second longest winning streak in the league, right behind the Canes. They've won their last 6 in a row. They are 6-1-1 in their last 8 games. So their record, I think they dropped the first 2 games or something like that, but now they're starting to catch some fire. Again, no pun intended. So Calgary looks really good.
Yeah, they do.
And we have a Jacob Markstrom stat coming here shortly that'll probably explain why. Nashville won their last 3. They started the season 1-4, so that's good for them. Arizona, Chicago, the last 2 teams that are winless, they've lost their last 9. Don't really have much more to say than that. The Sharks, I touched on it earlier, but they're 1-3 in their last 4 after starting the year off, I believe 4-0. So a little bit of turmoil that we kind of expected from them. Hit a little later than we thought, but I was not big on the Sharks, but I was liking the Sharks as value bets in the first week of the season, but I think that ship has sailed, so no longer touching that.
I would say so.
Unfortunately for me, the Penguins, they've lost their last 3. I know last week I said them on the money line would give you some good values with the star players out. That has not been the case for this past week, so I would start staying clear of them, especially now that Sid's back. The values are just way too high with how they're playing. And then the Jets, they're 4-0-1 in their last 5. We said at the season previews they were going to be sick. They kind of disappointed us on opening night and then a couple games thereafter, but they've seemed to find their stride a little more here. So Winnipeg is back on the good list, in my opinion.
Yeah, and back on the never bet again list for me. I can never get a read on that team, but Ehlers looks really good. Kyle Connor looks really good. Hellebuck looks good. That's a team that could make some noise. So just keep an eye on them.
Yes. So just to recap last week's trends, and some of them are going to translate over to this week, but McDavid over 1.5 points at home. He had 2 games this past week, 1 at home, 1 away. The away one, he only got 1, so that did not hit. That was last night on Sunday, Halloween. But the one at home, I can't remember who they played. I think it might have been Vancouver. Maybe
Sounds
not.
right.
That game hit. Maybe it was Philly. I think it was Philly, actually. But last week that hit, so that was nice. I had an irresponsible amount of money on that, so that was nice to see. Zach Hyman to score. That happened in the same game.
Yep.
That was at plus 200, so that one hit. Told you guys last week, him playing on that first line and power play. It's got good value if you're not trying to bet the Draisaitl and McDavid goals. Ilya Sorokin unders. That went 1-0 on the week. Had that on Saturday to kick off my perfect Saturday card. They played Nashville, and that game ended 3-2. Connor Garland, point props. I haven't been keeping up with this one. I'm going to be honest. Full disclosure, so whatever. Penn's money line, obviously just told you guys that hasn't been working. Lightning first period unders. That went 1-1 this week. There was, when we recorded last week, it hit when they played the Pens, and then they exploded against the Yotes. So that went 1-1 on the week, but they do play the Capitals tonight, and I might be taking that, especially with VV in net.
Yep.
Panthers money line, say less. And then unfortunately, my big pick for last week was the over in the Leafs-Hawks game on Wednesday night. That did not hit. It was the over was at 6. There was only 5 scored in the game. Jack Campbell played completely out of his mind. I watched that entire game. He looked really good in the third period, so he robbed me of that. But the McDavid props have been saving me. So
nice.
That's been nice. This week, we're going to keep it going. So we got McDavid over 1.5 points at home. I'm going to bet that every home game for the Oilers this season, and I'm not even exaggerating.
No, and as you should. When he's at home, it hits. There's going to be the oddball where it doesn't, or he gets 1, or he gets 5, but it's going to happen.
So that's going to be my staple all year long. Zach Hyman, taking him to score again. Ilya Sorokin unders. They're 3-0 on the season, so keep taking those. Here's a new one. Igor Shesterkin on the road this year is 4-0 with a .99 GAA. I know you bet the Rangers last night.
I did.
He looks phenomenal. The Rangers look really good too after dropping the opening night game to the Caps. But
yeah,
they look good. And that's a great stat on the road. You're going to get a little bit of better value on the unders and the Rangers when they're on the road. So keep an eye out for that. He's been
For
playing
sure.
really well.
I had one of those nice little, half the unit on the money line.
Love those.
Went ahead and doubled it for the value on the puck line, and it paid off.
Yeah, that's always a good feeling. Calgary Flames money line. They've won 6 straight. And maybe take a look at the unders because Jacob Markstrom is on a 134-minute shutout streak. That's over 2 games. His last 2 games, he's had 2 shutouts. We said that when we announced he was the first star of the week. So the Flames look really good. Money lines and unders. I mean, if Markstrom's starting, that's got to be your go-to.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, going back to the, you want to talk like puck lines on the road, the Flames and the Rangers right now with Shesterkin and Markstrom playing as well as they have been. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. The Lightning first period unders hit against the Pens when we were recording last week, and then they fucked it up against the Yotes because the Yotes had like a rookie goalie in, so they put up 3 in the first. I didn't take that one. I was about to, but thank God you guys warned me about the Yotes goaltender. Yep. Thank you. Here's a new one and a really good one at that. The Dallas Stars have hit the under in every game so far this season. All 8 of their contests have hit the under. I'm going to pull up something here real quick. I know Holtby's been playing really well.
He has been. The Stars are a really interesting franchise with this kind of stuff. I know last year or 2 years ago, maybe it was, we were like so high going into the year on their puck line bets because they have, like, when you look at like a team that's going to have good puck line bets, you're looking, okay, yeah, they can score. They're a good team, solid defense, so they're not going to give up too many, and then a good goalie. And Dallas had those. And it turned out to go a little bit flat, but I think it's just a team that's good for unders. It's kind of like the Flyers the Islanders, They don't necessarily have the most run and gun offensive talent, but they'll win these. Yeah, they'll win these 1-0, 2-1 games.
So in terms of the under this season, Dallas is 8-0 against the under. That's great. The Rangers are 7-1-1 against the under. That's also really good. We just mentioned Shesterkin on the road, large part of that. Ottawa at number 3, they're 6-1 on the year against the under. That one that did not hit was against the Caps. That was a complete gong show. And then Florida, Vancouver, and the Islanders all tied for 5th place on the unders. So just something to keep an eye on. The Islanders are 5-1-1, so I like them on the unders as well. Nick, I'm going to let you take this prop because you found this gem.
I did. Tyler Bertuzzi shots on goal, the over-under, whatever your site has. If it's a 2, take it, because this through 7 games this year, this guy has 20 shots on net.
Yes, and I believe he's hit it almost every game, if not every game. So
do math, and the numbers come out pretty good for you there. The other one I want to talk about is if you are going to be putting in player props like this, do yourself a favor and look at the team around them. It's easy to go, oh, this guy's like a really, really talented scorer. He's probably going to have a goal tonight. But if their team's garbage and they might not be getting, power play time or something like that, it could just be a really, really bad hockey team. They could get scored on a ton. And because of that, they're down a ton. That player doesn't get ice time. There's a ton of variables that go into it. But I think, Harry, a great example of this is the McDavid prop is so good because the Oilers have that offensive talent. If he's not scoring himself, he's got Draisaitl, he's got Hyman, he's got Puljujarvi. Same goes if you're going to do a player prop, for the Leafs. Yeah, the Leafs have Marner, Matthews, Nylander, Tavares, Morgan Riley, but the depth is lacking a little bit. Yeah, the Caps have Ovi and, Backstrom when he's healthy, but they tend to get scoring from kind of random places sometimes. So these are just things that you want to think about going into the season.
Random stat, and I'm only saying it because you mentioned the Oilers. Their power play is operating at 50% so far this season. So absolutely lethal.
I'd love to see the home numbers on that too.
So that really wraps it up for the gambling trends that we think you guys should be keeping an eye on. I say it all the time, but McDavid 1.5 is the best bet in sports right now when he's at home. So
you're not wrong.
I will be taking that tonight. Nick, just a little different segment. I want to start doing some power rankings.
Sure.
So for the end of October, here is where we stand, in my opinion, in terms of the top 5 teams. Carolina has to be number 1. They're the last undefeated team. Panthers haven't lost in regulation. They're number 2. The last three on here, you can kind of interchange, but I have the Oilers 3. I have them above the Flames because they beat the Flames. So I have Oilers 3, St. Louis 4, and Calgary 5. That's who I think the top 5 teams are right now.
Okay, interesting. So I'm going to agree with your top 2. So Cats and Canes in reverse order. So Canes 1, Cats 2. I, in good conscience, can't say that the Oilers are a top 5 team right now, just because I know what I know is going to happen with them. Something in my head is saying no. I'm going to go ahead and say the Blues are my number 3 team. I think they look dangerous right now. Mm-hmm. And sort of in a similar light, because it's the Flames, I'm going to put the Flames at 4. I think the Blues will have a little bit more of a long run consistency than the Flames will. And then to round off that 5th spot, that's tough.
You could honestly choose the Caps, the Rangers.
Honestly, right now, with how well they're playing, I'm going to say the Red Wings.
The Red Wings. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Over the Oilers. Shit. Okay.
Yeah.
Someone is not slurping what they're serving in Edmonton. So
the Red Wings are 3rd in the Atlantic, man. Don't sleep on them. I'm not saying they're going to make the playoffs or be like real, but I think, how they've been playing as of late.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. That kind of does it for this episode, folks. Nick, do you have any final notes? I miss Mac. It's definitely different without Mac, I will say.
Yeah. Miss our buddy. I don't really have anything else before we wrap up. Got anything fun going on this week?
Not really, dude. Just hunkering down, getting ready to go back to Mexico in a couple weeks, this time for vacation. So that'll be a nice little break.
Attaboy.
Other than that, just trying to keep making money on this shit, over 1.5.
Yep. It's the only way to do it.
And Tesla stock, apparently. So yeah, if you know, you know.
Oh, sounds good.
All right, everybody. Well, we appreciate you listening. We'll be back with you for our 100th episode next week. Keep an eye out on the social media. Go check out our store at www.emptybetters.com to check out the fall merch drop. Thank you for listening. And without further ado,
class dismissed.